My name is Jasmine Marshall. I am a board member for Chicago's only bisexual nonprofit, Chicago Queer Alliance of Chicago. I've been doing a lot of activism. I am originally from Kansas, and I moved here for graduate school, and in Kansas I did a lot of activism ever since I was like 13. I'm 23 now. I came to Chicago because Kansas isn't the best politically for us, and so I thought I'd be able to find community that wasn't discriminated against. It was eerie to when I first came here, seeing like same-sex couples walking down the street with holding their hands, and my first thought is that's not safe. Because it just wasn't safe to do in Kansas. Then I was like, wait, you're in a major metropolitan area, in a neighborhood, this is probably okay. And just really, the shift in culture, I think, was a lot better for me, mental health-wise, and for a variety of other reasons. I found myself pulled very strongly to be a part of this community, and seeing, as I mentioned before, like holding hands out in public, not something you do. That's just a risk to your safety, particularly for male couples. And to see couples embracing and to feel comfortable in a space where they weren't just, gal pals or like good friends. It was like the weight of oppression just sort of like fell off. I don't think I would have described it that way back then, but like when I think about it, that's sort of like, this is a space where that weight doesn't carry. I just sort of operated with the assumption that, everybody has feelings for both genders. That's just logical. But everyone just, you only had relationships, like out relationships with people that were a different gender than you were. But the word came into my consciousness probably when I was about 10, and it was very like, oh, that's the word for what I feel? Oh, that makes sense. And, it was a very like cut and dry, like I didn't have like the, who am I, what am I? I'm like, oh, that's my word. Okay, got it. I went into high school out because, I joined the GSA, and I was really active in that from pretty much day one. I did theater, so people, were like, oh, this is my identity. Oh, that's where the gay kids go. I read as straight, and a lot of people perceive bisexuality as basically straight, at least for women. And so it was just like, oh, well, she's just, over there, she's bi, I guess. But, I never really experienced like the brunt of bullying that like my peers did. As far as bullying goes, like there were other issues, like a lot of us had a lot of issues, like coming to terms with who we are, and a large group of us like turned to alcohol, and partying and drugs, and it kind of like when I look back, it was something a little bit more above than like high school kids going out having a drink, drinking. I was able to find pretty early, I think, this was like 15. We went to our first like Pride Festival in Wichita, and it was just like, there's more than the 6 of us. There's so many of us, and that was a really, not just eye-opening, but just like a really good experience to know that there's a community. The only LGBT people I knew were people below the age of 25. And to see, our assumption was you left Kansas as soon as you could, because it just wasn't safe for us. At that time, we kind of thought that being LGBT, you get this message, especially like this was, 2000s, where it was like, gay is this new phenomenon that's like popping out with young people, instead of like the reality, which is LGBT people have been around for forever, you're just paying attention now. I think the way that I think about my identity is very different now. I always knew that I was bi, but I used gay because that's sort of what the what the community wanted. You had to be one unit, and, also, finding myself fighting more, like, within myself about having to be gay enough to be a member of the community, finding myself, I think back then, a lot more, using the word gay, and so everybody in my life was like, wait, are you gay? You bi? Like, what is happening? I don't get it. And, when I entered a serious relationship, like in high school, with a man, like, the whole shift of my place in the community, because I was, a youth leader in the community. There was a whole shift of who I was. Oh, well, you're straight now. You're an ally. So, I wasn't as included, and now I'm in a context where, that's still something, I've experienced in the gay and lesbian community in Chicago, but to have a bi community, like, where I can go and everybody in the room I know shares my experience. That wasn't something that, I had the same level of when I went to gay and like general LGBT spaces or pride festivals or in Kansas, because we were there, but we were all gay together, and so I think I'm a lot more solid in who I am, and I don't shy away so much from the word bi anymore. I also think I'm a lot happier now. Back then, when you hear messages all the time of there are, you always run into a billboard that says marriage equals one man plus one woman. You have, some resilience to be able to push back on that and be like, that's stupid, that's not, my experience. When people talk about, like, gender being, like, essential to the relationships, like, well, I'm straight, so I must have relationships with people of this gender, or, I'm gay, so I must have, like, that just feels so confining. And it's conceptually, that's hard for me to even, like, wrap my head around. But I think that thinking about how gender doesn't really, it's not a determining factor for me what my relationships could be, or who I am. And I think also part of that makes me, like, when I think about my experience, I think it's a lot easier for me to be more open-minded to other experiences too, because my experience is one that isn't viewed as legitimate or valid in a lot of contexts. And so I think it's helped me be more empathetic to other people whose experiences where they're not viewed as legitimate or valid, and so on and so forth. Our community quickly got marriage rights, and now we're kind of in the age of retaliation. As far as from the further right conservative members of our country, and I think about how also our community, I don't think, does a very good job prioritizing what our needs are. Not to dismiss, like, I think marriage is important and we needed it, but we also need our children to have a place to live. We need people to not face housing discrimination. We need to not deal with, workplace discrimination, like those issues. So I think the priorities of our community, I think, is a big issue, especially in the light of our current political climate. I constantly have to come out. It's not, I didn't have, and members of my community don't have this experience where, at 13, 16, or, whatever age, it's, I am out, everyone knows that I'm gay now. That's not an experience we have. We have to constantly come out to people again and again and again. Being out, I think, is, if I were to put it in one word, is, it feels like I'm in line, like I'm, like, that feeling of genuineness and, almost integrity with myself.